Hey, first grade friends. Today we are going to read Hu Gu Po, okay? Our learning objectives are to identify elements of a folktale, identify similarities and differences in two fairy tales, demonstrate an understanding of the word cunning, and use a graphic organizer to compare and contrast two folktales. Our key vocabulary are alarmed, cunning, latch, perplexed, and strict. Okay. Alarmed is an adjective and it means worried or frightened, feeling a sense of danger. My dog was alarmed and began to bark when the postman approached the door. Cunning is an adjective. Remember, adjectives are our descriptive words, meaning they describe someone or something. And cunning means sly or clever in a trickster way. The cunning wolf disguised himself in the skin of a sheep. Oh, I had a hiccup. Latch. Latch is a verb, and latch means to lock. Leah sometimes forgets to latch the backyard gate. Perplexed. Perplexed is an adjective, and it means confused. Amami had a perplexed look on her face as she stared at the puzzle. Strict. Strict is also an adjective and it means serious, demanding that people obey rules or behave in a certain way. My school has strict rules for behavior on field trips. We must stay with our chaperone at all times. All right, let's do a little bit of review. So, who can tell me what a folktale is? What is a folktale? It's a story that someone made up a long, long time ago, and it has been told over and over again. Is a folktale true or make-believe? It's make-believe, meaning it is fiction. Who remembers the name of the folktale that we heard in the previous lesson? Little Red Riding Hood. And which country did the story of Little Red Riding Hood originate? It originated in Germany. Okay, and what did Little Red Riding Hood's mother tell her in the beginning of the story? She said, "Stay on the path and don't stop. Go straight to grandmother's house." Who did Little Red Riding Hood meet in the woods? The wolf. And what did the wolf do after he met Little Red Riding Hood in the woods? He went to grandmother's house and ate her whole and then disguised himself as grandmother to trick Little Red Riding Hood. Okay. Who rescued Little Red Riding Hood and grandmother? The hunter. Okay, so Little Red Riding Hood did not follow her mother's instructions and was tricked by a wolf. Today, you are going to hear a story that originated in a different land, but whose main characters face a conflict similar to the one in Little Red Riding Hood. Excuse me. All right, so where are we? Today's read aloud originated in a country called China many, many years ago. This is the continent of Asia. Remember, Ishan Boshi was also on the continent of Asia, but it was in Japan. This story is in the country of China. Okay. All right, our key vocabulary: alarmed, cunning, latch, perplexed, and strict. This story is from China and is similar to Little Red Riding Hood. Although there are similarities, some things in the story will be different. I want you to listen carefully to find out which sorts of things happen in today's read aloud that are similar to the actions of the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood. Okay. Now, this story, because it is from China, some of the words are hard for me to say, so just be patient with me, okay? A long time ago in rural southern China, there lived a mother and her two daughters. Oxing was the eldest and Li Hao was the youngest. Oxing, Li Hao, and their mother raised silkworms and sold their silk at the local market. Silkworms produce silk thread that can be used to make cloth for dresses and clothing. One sunny fall morning, the girl's mother set off to the local market to sell the silk thread they had spun. However, on this particular occasion, she had decided to leave some silk thread behind so that she could make 2 new silk dresses for her daughters. Before the girl's mother left, she gave them strict or serious instructions to stay inside the house. "Do not go outside," the mother said to the girls. "I have heard rumors that Hu Gu Po has come down into the foothills. She is a tiger that disguises herself as an old woman and tries to trick people. Please latch or lock the door as soon as I leave." So what are the mother's instructions? Don't go outside and lock the door. "We will not go outside, I promise," said Oshing. "I will lock the door and we will spend our time cleaning the house." "We will be right here waiting for you," promised Li Hao. And so the mother kissed her daughters and disappeared into the early morning mist that was rising up from the warm earth. Immediately, the 2 girls set to work. They scrubbed the floor and dusted all the nooks and crannies of their small little farmhouse. It was almost midday by the time they were finished. The sun was shining brightly and the birds were chirping loudly when the girls heard a knock on the door. "Do not answer the door," said Oshing to her younger sister. "I will find out who it is." Oshing stood in front of the locked door and asked, "Who is there?" "Hello, my sweet dear," said a voice that sounded as ancient as the hills. "I have been walking for many miles. I wonder, could you spare a cup of water?" Oshing was perplexed or confused. She knew that she should not open the door, but somehow she felt that this old woman, for old woman it appeared to be, was in need of help. So what were her mother's instructions? Keep the door locked and don't go outside, right? What do you think Oshing's going to do? Let's see if you're right. "I cannot open the door," explained Oshing, "but I can pass a cup of water through the open window." "Thank you, my dear," replied the somewhat croaky voice. "You are very kind." Oshing filled up a cup of water from the bucket that contained drinking water from their well. "Here you are," she said, and passed the cup through the open window. The old woman now stood before the window. She took the cup in her old wrinkly hand and drank from it. When she was done, she handed the cup back to Oshing. "How sweet your well water is," said the old woman. "Thank you," said Oshing as she spoke. Oshing looked more closely at the old woman. Just like her hands, her face was old and wrinkly. However, the woman had the most peculiar golden amber eyes that Oshing had ever seen. "I don't suppose you have a little rice to spare?" asked the old woman. As it happened, Li Hao had just cooked rice for lunch. "Yeah, we have some rice we can give you," shouted Li Hao as she eagerly placed some in a small porcelain bowl. Then she rushed to the window and handed the old woman the bowl and some chopsticks. The old woman looked at Li Hao and licked her lips. "Why, thank you, my dear," said the old woman while staring intently at Li Hao. "I don't suppose you would let me sit for a minute or two while I eat this delicious rice?" asked the old woman. "Of course you can!" exclaimed Li Hao, and before Oshing could stop her, Li Hao ran to the door, unlocked it, and opened it. Uh-oh. In the blink of an eye, the old woman was in the house and sitting at the kitchen table. It was as if she had appeared by magic. Oshing began to feel alarmed. Why do you think Oshing is starting to feel alarmed or worried? Let's see if you're right. "Are you here all alone?" asked the old woman. "Yeah," replied Li Hao. "Our mother's gone to sell the silk thread our silkworms produce. She told us to stay inside for safety, and that is what we've done," continued Li Hao proudly. "I see," replied the old woman. "You are very wise girls. There are all kinds of dangers outside in the world." Well, as soon as you've finished your rice, interrupted Oshing, I'm sure you're going to want to be on your way. I am almost finished, replied the old woman, who, despite her words of praise, did not seem to like eating rice. There are only 2 more things that I need. Oh? What are they? Asked Li Hao. Oshing guessed the answer just as the cunning or sly old woman uttered the words. 2 young girls, exclaimed the old woman. Once again, as if by magic, the old woman's movements were sudden and quick. She produced a sack, and before Oshing could stop her, she snatched Li Hao and placed her inside it. Uh-oh. All right, really quick, what characters have we met so far? Oshing and Li Hao and her mother, and then the old woman, right? Who knocked at the door? The old woman. And what did the old woman do to Li Hao? She stuck her in the bag, right? She caught her. You are older, announced the old woman, and probably not very tasty. I'm not sure that I want the trouble of carrying you into the mountains. As the old woman was speaking, Oshing reached for some spun silk thread that her mother had left behind. It had been spun and wound around the small branch of a mulberry bush. Oshing secretly placed it inside the pocket of her dress. Oshing had also decided that she would not let the old woman leave without her. Why do you think Oshing reached for the silk thread? Let's see if you're right. I want to be with my sister, replied Oshing. Very well, said the old woman. Into the sack you go. And in an instant, Oshing found herself stuffed inside the sack beside her sister. It was clear to Oshing that the old woman had remarkable strength. She carried them with relative ease. After a while, the old woman stopped and placed the sack containing the 2 girls on the ground. Moments later, the sisters could hear someone or something noisily drinking water. As this was happening, Oshing whispered to her sister to be quiet. Then she used the mulberry branch that had held the silk thread to poke a hole in the sack. What she saw scared her half to death. Instead of an old woman, there was a tiger sitting on the edge of a large glistening lake. The old woman was really Hu Gu Po. So, did the tiger pretend to be an old woman in order to trick the girls or in order to be friends with the girls? To trick the girls, right? Incredibly, instead of continuing onward, the tiger lay down in the afternoon sunshine and went to sleep. While the tiger slept, Oshing slowly pulled at the hole in the sack until it was wide enough for her to crawl through. She motioned to her sister to quietly follow her. The girls crept toward the sleeping tiger. Oshing reached for the silk thread inside her pocket. Then, using the thread, the girls tied together the tiger's front and back legs. Just as they were finished, the tiger woke up and roared loudly. The tiger tried to set itself free, but the yards of silk thread had been wound around its leg too tight and held it fast. The girls ran like the wind back to their small farmhouse in the foothills. They hurried into their house, slammed the door, and locked it. When their mother finally returned home, she hugged her daughters tightly. We told you that we would be here waiting for you, said Oshing and Li Hao together. What lesson do you think the girls might have learned from this adventure? To be careful of strangers, right? And to listen to their mother. All right, that's the end of our story. Go ahead, hop up, get a quick break, and then come back for your comprehension questions. Okay, what are the girl's mother's instructions before she leaves for the market? The girl's mother's instructions are to stay inside and latch the door. Which characters have you learned about who received instructions from their mother? Little Red Riding Hood. Who knocks at the door? An old woman knocks at the door. And what does the old woman say she wants from the children? a cup of water and a bowl of rice, right? How does the old woman trick the girls into letting her inside the house? She asks if she could sit down while she eats the rice, right? But what does the old woman really want? She really wants to snatch the girls to eat them, right? And who is disguised as an old woman? The tiger Hu Gu Po is disguised as an old woman, right? Which other character that you have learned about used a disguise? The wolf disguised himself as Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother, right? And how do the sisters escape? They poke a hole in the sack with the mulberry stick and then use the silk thread to tie up the sleeping tiger. How does the sisters' escape compare to how Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother escape? The sisters free themselves, and the Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother get free because the hunter frees them, right? All right, word work time. So in the read aloud, you heard Oshing guess the answer just as the cunning old woman uttered the words. I want you to say the word cunning. Cunning. Can you say it in a whisper voice? Cunning. How about in a mouse voice? Cunning. Cunning. Okay. Cunning means sly or clever in a trickster way. In Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf was cunning and tried to trick Little Red Riding Hood. Have you ever heard or read other stories where the main character was cunning? I want you to try to use the word cunning when you tell about it. What's the word we've been talking about? Cunning. All right, so I'm going to say several situations. If the person in the situation is doing something cunning, I want you to say, that is cunning. If the person in the situation is not doing something cunning, I want you to say, that is not cunning. One sunny fall morning, the girls' mother set off to the local market to sell the silk thread that they had spun. That is not cunning. The tiger, known as Hu Gu Po, pretended to be an old woman so that she could get inside the house and capture the girls. That is cunning, okay? My cousin pretended that he didn't know how to wash dishes so that my brother would have to do it for him. That is cunning. That's pretty tricky, man. My aunt brought me soup when I was not feeling well. That's not cunning. All right, my friends, that is all I have for you today. Let's check that we've reached all of our learning objectives. Okay, we were able to identify elements of a folktale. We identified some similarities and differences in two fairy tales. We were able to demonstrate an understanding of the word cunning. And here in just a bit, you're going to use a graphic organizer to compare and contrast two folktales. All right, guys, thanks for watching. See you next time.